Did you like Tucker Carlson's interviewing method?
I did because he just asked a question and then let tape flow. And then he just like chimed in every once in a while. And that's honestly a skill I want to work on myself for this podcast.
You know, yeah, it's like. So, have you seen other interviews, of course, with him?
I'm gonna be honest, I've
Not
seen
really.
Tucker like here and there on clips for Fox,
No, I'm
but I've
sorry, with
never.
Andrew Tate. With
Oh,
Andrew Tate.
Andrews,
Yeah.
yeah, I've watched like almost all of them, but I've never actually watched his like YouTube channel and before he got canceled and all that.
Right. So, do you? I kind of picked this up. Or Jared kind of picked this up. My roommate. He said like Tucker's questions were more open ended. I picked that up a little bit, but only after he mentioned it. Did you pick that up?
Yeah, I think the point today of Tucker was just to like let him talk and let him say his story. But it was cool at the end
Right.
how he like he asked little specific questions like, "How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that?"
He was showing him clips. He was showing him clips and stuff. Right.
Honestly, my favorite question was at the end when he was like, "How do you feel about cryptocurrency?"
He Andrew Tate answered the question about digital currency
Mm-hmm.
regulated by the government, which was
Mm-hmm.
interesting, which is on a philosophical level what cryptocurrency is supposed to be against, decentralization,
Mm-hmm.
not manipulated by a single individual, but controlled by those who own the coin, you know.
What do you
But
think
he
though? Like, what will happen in the future? Like, if crypto will be regulated?
if crypto is regulated, then we're not in a good spot. If it remains true to the philosoph excuse me, if it remains true to the philosophical underpinnings under which it was founded, then um, I think we're going to be good. But sorry, just said. But that's the thing: is it federal, global government, federal government, global organizations want to get involved in the regulation of it, then it's going to be even worse than cash, bro. It's because the transaction times are like that. There's no in macroeconomics. There's lag times because of certain. How do I want to say this? The liquidity of certain assets um, has like this transferring lag time. Especially when federal governments decide to move interest rates or stuff. There, it takes a little bit of times for certain programs to be seen on like a person to person consumer and producer level. But
Mm.
basically instantaneous transaction times that are supposed to be the goal of cryptocurrency and smart contracts, uh, regulations that are not in the favor of of like general population, you'll probably see
Mm-hmm.
that pretty quickly. Which could be good and could be bad though. But I think in general, centralization of how would you want to say it, of like currencies is bad.
Yeah, right. Honestly, I thought what was most scary was when he said basically that every single time you do a transaction with crypto, that the bank will get a piece, and therefore the government.
You're just talking about credit cards, 1.5%, 1.5%.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, it's interesting because of the cryptocurrencies right now. These fees are going towards um, maintaining the infrastructure, the network that the cryptocurrency is operating within. I am so far away from a crypto expert, and I think I should not be talking about it. But that's what I know. That's what I know about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, same. Honestly,
You know what? What do you think? Okay, here's a good question. If you had a son and he was like, "Hey, Dad, look at this guy. It shows you Andrew Tate." What would you say to him? Like, let's say he showed you like a clipped something that was clipped in order to make Andrew Tate come across as misogynistic.
I mean, I hope this aspect of my personality never changes, but whenever someone shows me anything, I like to do my own research. And so I'd like to think if I had children that if they showed me something, then I would watch it and then watch other content and then make a decision.
Well, let's say how you know Andrew Tate right now. Let's say it was said to do something with. He's marketed as being a misogynist, right? Let's say it had something to do with misogyny, or like your kid said something interesting about women, about girls, and you're like, "Hey, where'd you hear that?" It's like, "Oh, there's this Andrew Tate dude on TikTok." Blah blah blah. What would you say? What would you say to him?
Again, I think I just have to check it out for myself, But like, if he did say something out of pocket about women,
Yeah,
then
let's say he said something out of pocket.
I would have to check him. But then I would look it up for I'd look it up for myself, and then make a decision like, oh, am I going to allow my son to view this content?
Right. You know what I would. So I asked you this question because I was thinking about it today after a conversation I had with my coworkers that wasn't really a conversation. But what I thought about was, okay, let's say that they're clipping Andrew Tate to market him as a misogynist. What I would say is to my son is, what do you think that two of the most fundamental responsibilities for a man to his woman, like a girlfriend, spouse, like you're dating, are to protect and to provide. And if he's like, yeah, well, that's a good starting point. This is my opinion, of course.
Right.
And I think,
go on.
no, bro, go.
Well, I was just gonna say, okay, so I think just post something very important that happened to me in my life. That's why it affects my answer, because I got to a certain point where I realized that there's a lot of manipulation on the internet. And so because of that, now that's why I try my hardest to verify everything I consume. And so that's why I said, like, if I had children and they were watching any type of influencers, then I would have to check it out for myself. And like, I have a good example as well, because like my own dad, like, he would check the music that I listened to, he would check the shows, check the movies. So yeah.
So, but in this case, you know the content that Andrew Tate's putting out there. You know the long form, and his biggest issue is him getting clipped. And people putting it, and he, from a philosophical debate, because his interview with that BBC lady descended into what I would consider a philosophical debate. Well, not really. It's like deep down it is, but he has 95% of his issues covered, and he's able to take care of it using pretty decent logic. His one mistake, of course, though, which is like, if you're gonna make anyone in the whole world, IQ level 1,000 would make this mistake, is that he didn't realize how big he would get and how he would get clipped.
Yeah, I think so. We're probably like in a mid game right now of like internet. And so probably when he started, it was early internet. And so I don't think a lot of people could have foreseen clipping.
I mean, it was around, but I think it was just the rate at how fast he got big, and then how loud the voices were against him. That was like, yo, shit, they're gonna take all my stuff out of context, and then throw it into the algorithm, throw it against men. What do you think about him saying that he doesn't believe in depression?
See, like, okay, I'm not gonna lie, I do agree. Yeah, I agree, because like, again, it's true. Like, you are heavily influenced by your emotions, and it's your responsibility to not let them influence you. And I know that's so much easier said than done. And I feel like this is something learned later in adult life.
Um,
But yeah, I mean, I understand that there's like there's people that have just had very difficult lives.
Yeah, I know. Like,
And there's
I
also
can't. I can't
people.
speak for those people personally. You
Exactly.
know, I can't speak for those people who grew up in like like really difficult starting points and had for like the first decade and a half of their life, just like what you would consider the worst luck. You know,
And would you agree with the statement that there's some people that are born with a chemical imbalance, perhaps?
with his statement or just the broad
In general,
psychiatric.
would you agree with that?
Dude, this is a great question, bro. I will say yeah, but I think the percentage is much lower than what the prescriptions of antidepressants are reflecting.
Yes. So those are my two exceptions. My two exceptions are people that have had really difficult lives and people with chemical imbalances. But for the most part, and whatever, I'm gonna sound like I don't know, like a hater, but like yeah, it's like most of us really do live good lives.
Yeah, and it's I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. A large majority of the people who I met who have lived what I would consider quote difficult lives are in better mood more often than not than the people who have lived blessed lives. And
Yeah,
it's like we've talked about several times. It's about your baseline, and movements relative to that baseline. Um, but
yeah,
I will be honest. I don't agree with him, and when he says that depression isn't real, I think I can be convinced otherwise. And every time he talks about it, it pushes the needle towards his way. I think that the way that our culture, Western culture, has marketed and talked about depression is hyperbolous in nature,
hmm,
exaggerated and erroneous. But I think it is real, and I think he's asking to get clipped when he says depression isn't real. You know what I'm saying, bro?
yeah. And so the thing is like at least the way I understood was that he said that it's real, but it's up to you to like let it like how much does it influence you, you know?
Right. We're about to segue into a really key point that I wanted to touch on, um, where he used the analogy with a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember? I
Yeah.
do not agree. I don't agree with that at all. Where,
Dude, I don't agree with that because you know that I believe in that spooky stuff,
well,
but it was a good
not,
analogy.
I thought it was a terrible analogy. Because well, what if the ghost is real? Just because you don't believe in it doesn't mean that it won't possess you. And talking about depression, talking about ghosts, these are things that are non tangibles, sort of non tangibles. And it's like, well, not believing in things in the realm of how do we want to call this pseudo tangibility, these kinds of notions like mental disorders, neuroses, like spiritual stuff, like whatever vibes, um, is like not believing that kind of stuff. True that if you don't believe it, and it doesn't give you power, but this would be an interesting research thing to do is to like look at how people perceive depression and whether or not they have it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, you
but
probably run into the placebo effect for sure.
yeah, and I think if you take the DSM-50 definition, which I haven't revisited the DSM-50 class categorizations in a while. I think I should, but I think that last I saw, I think they need some revamping. But I'm not a psychologist and I don't have a PhD, so who cares what I say? But I think the categorization of DSM-50 depression is pretty on point, and that it's a real thing, though. It's just the fact that he chooses to word it in quote depression is not real. I don't like that.
Yeah, that's definitely exaggeration for clicks, how you said. But I just pulled up the
Maybe
definition.
I think he says it that way to get a certain point across.
Yeah. So
You know.
the definition DSM-5 depression: feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day, diminished ability to think or concentrate, or indecisiveness nearly every day, recurrent thoughts of death, recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan, or a suicide attempt or a specific plan for committing suicide.
Dude, I just want to apologize because I said DSM-50 and I mixed it up with the LD-50 from toxicology. I mixed up toxicology and psychological diagnoses. That's a regrettable statement that we just captured live right there. I'm ashamed.
It's gonna
To
happen,
mix up DSM-5. Thank you for actually looking it up though.
dude. Honestly,
But no, I think that definition, if someone says they're depressed, I think about that as like this matches 1-to-1 pretty well,
So here's the kicker for me. When he said, whenever you get negative emotions, they're triggers by your psyche to do something about it. And I did agree with that part because a lot of decisions that I've made to better myself have been because of depressive thoughts.
Right. You didn't give in. You chose to act against it,
Mm-hmm.
And uh, the more I think archetypally, if we're gonna go archetypally here, that's a masculine thing, to
Mm-hmm.
change the setting, how it is, how it presents itself, to bend the world to your will, despite neurotic emotion. Um, because same, I have several examples too where it's sort of acted as a fuel in a
Mm-hmm.
way, right? Instead of overwhelming, instead of allowing myself to be overwhelmed by it. Yeah, and I like that he in the interview said what you just touched on was that depression should be looked at symptomatically,
Mm-hmm.
not how would you want to say that? How would you want to say that? Not as the root or whatever, not as the foundation that extrapolates out, but as the symptom of
Mm-hmm.
something else that's going
A
wrong with it.
symptom.
Yeah.
Damn, we kind of brought it down a little bit. So, were there any other parts that you liked?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Oh, I want to criticize him because I would say for myself that I think that in general, Andrew Tate's top G, bro. He I think that his message should be spread, uh, and like people should very carefully think about what he has to say. You know, um, but here's this is gonna take us. I hope this takes us. It will on an interesting segue. He says that he doesn't learn any other languages besides English. So this
Yeah.
is what I want to call into criticisms of Andrew Tate, and because he says this thing. He says, "I don't know any other languages besides English because I don't know English."
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't mastered English, you know. As a fighter, he should understand though. As a kickboxer, just because you don't master, quote master, whoever wants to put the heuristic for what is considered mastery on one tool does not mean you necessarily neglect it. Let's say you have a pretty nasty cross, a power hand straight, a good cross. Let's say it's at 70%. And you've worked on it for 12 years and it's at like 70%. That doesn't mean that you've only worked on the cross technique for that entire 12 years. You've worked on the low kick, you've worked on the switch stance head kick, you've worked on your combination jab jab cross of the body. I think that's a short-sightedness that he ran into some issues with going into the Romanian judicial system that he commented on. He's like, all these people are, the court's not speaking a language that I know. Well, honestly, I think he should have had some humility there and integrated into the country that he lives in.
Right.
But again, I don't own a Bugatti, so who am I to say what languages he should learn, bro?
Yeah.
I couldn't even afford a quarter of a Bugatti. So, but it's my opinion, and I mean, you can speak like 2.5 languages.
2.5.
Like, can't you understand Portuguese?
So here's the thing. I understand most of Romance languages. Yeah.
Most what? Oh yeah,
Most of
Like
most of
Italian,
romances. Yeah.
right? Yeah, Latin. And it's like, bro, we go to Miami. That's a hack. It's
Mm-hmm.
a hack, dude. And Top G, dude, Andrew Tate's into hacks, bro. Smokes cigars to up his testosterone level, which I think is
Is that
questionable.
real?
I've I've felt it.
Mm-hmm.
I've felt it. I think there's like two primary research studies that have been done that show transient increases. Transient being like 3 hours, maybe transient increases for 3 hours have an effect up here. That I noticed because I noticed like I was taking less like crap from people. But that would go down a whole another translocation to the nucleus. During what time periods are these transcription factors that testosterone codes or testosterone activates um, going on, and then what's the timeline for the neurological adaptation? That's a whole nother rabbit hole, of course, having to do with um, cigar applications, But he's into hacks. Why not learn another language?
Right. Do you think he's on the juice?
He's a big dude. His dad was black. He was in jail and I would say no, but I think no. But I would certainly not be surprised if he was. But the reason I say no is because he's extremely successful financially, socially. Um, he has a vast network of high value individuals in multiple countries, and he's owned casinos. He's him and his brother have done the OnlyFans thing with the girls. He runs the self help Discord program. He's extremely successful, and Derek More Plates More Dates, shout out, said that there's an interesting correlation between men's free tests, so that's not binded to sex hormone binding globulin. There's free tests, so that's available to act in the brain as far as psychological concepts of ambition and resilience and resistance are concerned. Correlation between free test and overall, I guess he use the term entrepreneurial like success. So I think that it's it's not enough of a red of a flag of a red herring to say, oh, he's definitely natural, but it's like probably. But what's really suspicious is his workout routine. What's been published in social media, if I were to look at that and then how he describes his workouts, I would not say that. And he's one meal a day. Um, Training dozens of clients in like the personal training realm over the past 8 years, and just like being what I would consider like extremely involved in the in the latest science coming out of like nutrition and exercise science, human performance, and like hypertrophy. It's extremely unlikely that he can maintain that mass over 200 pounds with his training regimen and his nutrition schedule.
Mm-hmm.
It's extremely suspicious in my opinion.
Well, honestly, whatever the truth is, it doesn't change like what I think about him.
I know, right? Exactly,
But
exactly.
so here's another question. You've consumed more of his content. Would you say that there's some misogynistic themes or maybe things that he has said?
We're Here's the issue: is that half the people who, not even half, I would say more than 90% of the people who claim that Andrew Tate is a misogynist don't have a working definition of misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because about a month and a half ago, I was in a car with this girl, and I was saying, "Oh, I gotta go do something. Blah, blah, blah. I gotta like download the software for a podcast." And she's like, "Oh, you're starting a podcast?" She's like, "Oh, it's not like Andrew Tate kind of stuff, right?" She's like, "Are you a misogynist?" And I said, "No, I'm not a misogynist. I love women." Dude,
Well, it's interesting because
like, what's your definition?
honestly, I don't even feel comfortable saying that, because I don't know the
You
exact
don't have a
definition of
working
the word.
definition.
That's why I don't use it.
Google it right now,
All right.
or I will.
In
Or, yeah, whatever.
in the meantime, so honestly, last year, I mean, I haven't done this recently. I haven't brought it up to women, but whenever you bring Andrew Tate up to other women, they immediately go to misogyny, right? And then you ask them, why is he misogynist, right? And then they'll say like something out of context or like some clip, or they would just be like, oh, well, I
It's the
heard.
clips, bro. Like we were talking about. That's his issue.
But
Is
here's the scary part is that they'll base that off of what they heard from someone else, or like what they read
yeah,
on social media.
yeah. I say it's his issue that he's getting clipped. It's not like his manufactured issue. It's an issue that has befallen him
Mm-hmm.
unintentionally. I say his issue, but that's not what I mean as it sounds.
So,
But
so
no,
here's the definition.
let's hear. Let's hear it.
Misogyny is hatred of, contempt for, or prejudice against women. It is a form of sexism that is used to keep women at a lower social status than men, thus maintaining the social roles of patriarchy.
Yeah, I don't think he's a misogynist.
Based off that definition, I don't think
I don't
either.
think he's a misogynist, dude. And this exposes a huge problem that you and I have talked about numerous times is the semantic issue in Western
Mm-hmm.
culture is that people are throwing around words like we talked about literally that one night is like society versus culture. Most often times people mean to use the word culture when or they say society and they mean culture,
Right.
and people want to throw around misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what that means, really.
Yeah. I mean, see, like that's why I was even hesitant to use the word because I wasn't sure.
All right. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break right now.
Okay.
All right, G. All right, stop.